Hey, let's get straight to Game of Thrones. This was the last episode of the season. And is it just me, or have we now started a tradition where the season finale has a lot less action than the episode before?
Yeah, I think that's something that's been consistent for all three seasons. The big thing happens in the penultimate episode, and the finale sort of just it kind of like tries to it wraps things up more than dangles things off the ledge, I feel like.
Yeah, and it seems like the first episode of the next season, it takes 2 or 3 episodes to just start dangling, as you put it, the new storylines.
Yeah, Game of Thrones does this a lot. I feel like the first half of each season actually takes forever just to get things going, and then by the time you're excited, it's over, and you're like, oh, 10 more months?
You're like, wait, what just happened?
So
Exactly.
sad.
I sort of like how that happens, though, because it's not obvious the things that have big consequences in Game of Thrones. It's just someone being pissed off about a personal slight or some political backroom deal at the small council or whatever, and then all of a sudden that changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, well let's wrap it up in our own minds and for the minds of our listeners here a bit. First, I want to talk about Tyrion. Where does Tyrion stand right now? I mean, his dad's coming down on him super hard as ever, but then Varys, of all people, had some really high praise for him. Sounded very foreboding, not ominous, but the opposite of ominous. Promising? Very good things to say about Tyrion in this episode when he talked to Shay, right?
Yeah, I think that Varys truly is. I mean, he's is a mysterious character, but I think he truly is interested in what is best for the realm. He said as much in the past, and we saw that Tyrion was really competent in a short time as the Hand. So I think it's clear that Varys has some plans for Tyrion.
Yeah, and I'm starting to be worried now. Anytime it looks like someone is going to be the hope for Westeros, that means they're probably going to die, is what it seems like at this point.
No, not with Tyrion. I think he's the character to watch. I don't think that they can. That would be a showstopper. I mean, Robb Stark is one thing, but Tyrion, I don't know. The Lannisters now are they're the family to watch. They're the reason to see the show, and it's pretty hard to see any of them go without a lot of uprising, at least from me internally.
Well, yeah, but that's if you look at Game of Thrones as a story being told, that's their favorite thing to mess with. They would never do that.
Well, I feel like we should almost do a rundown of all the characters, because we can check off Jon Snow from the list of the characters that could get killed off, and Bob would still watch the show. But Tyrion, no.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyway, but what did Varys say? So Tyrion is one of the few people. He has the mind for it, the will, and the right last name. That last name part seems to be the biggest factor in who could maybe do something, because the Lannisters really seem to be in their ascendancy right now. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he was doing all this while talking to Shay, because that's Tyrion's girlfriend, who sort of is getting in the way of things because she doesn't fit in. She's a chambermaid or whatever, and I think he was doing the right thing. And actually, I think that whole scene played out with me having less empathy for Shay, because she's just coming across as, I mean, she's in a crappy situation, but she's not making it any better, and she's just being really stubborn by wanting to stick around, and she could make a great life for herself if she'd just take the money and let Tyrion rule the kingdom and eventually come and get her later is my fantasy wanting to play out. But if she's going to stick around, she's going to make it all sorts of more complicated, which...
Yeah, so I have a question, and maybe Shannon can help. This sort of builds on what you're saying, Bob, but what I wonder is, how close is Tyrion to ruling this country? Let's say Joffrey, something horrific happens to him, maybe a hunting accident or something like that, and then so who are the various people with claim to the throne? Stannis, of course, will still say it was always his, right?
Right.
And then, but who will the Lannisters say is next in line? Shannon, can you help us with this one?
If Joffrey dies,
yeah,
he has 2 younger siblings, so they would become.
Okay.
They would, until they're young, but so Tywin would still be doing what he's doing now, unless those 2 kids were also offed.
Which apparently no one has any problem doing.
One of them's a boy, one of them's a girl. So it would go to his youngest brother, Tommen first, and then Marcella if Tommen died.
Do we have any reason to believe they're monsters like Joffrey?
No, everything we've seen of them is that they're very sweet. We saw Marcella being sent off to Dorne, though, earlier.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
Because they have a marriage alliance with them. So she's not there right now, but they could bring her back.
And so what's Tywin's strategy? Tywin's strategy has something to do with Tyrion and Sansa having a kid. And then, so if that kid were somehow heir to the Iron Throne and the House of Stark, that would be pretty powerful. But would some other people have to, unfortunately, die for that kid to actually...
For that kid
to
be in line for the throne? Well, so what they're planning with her is that they think... So as far as they know, she is the last Stark now. It's not true, but they think that she is. So she's heir to the north, to the whole north, to Winterfell. So what their plan is there is that Tyrion will rule the north.
Oh, okay.
Because he'll be married to Sansa, and
so it'll just be an alliance.
So it would be an alliance. That was Tywin's plan for him, because he told him he doesn't want him to inherit the
Casterly
Lannister
Rock.
seat, Casterly Rock.
Yes.
Why does that matter? It strikes me as odd when honor comes into play after there's like wars and you just kill everyone and you take the land. It's like, but since we have one of the daughters still surviving, we should just do this the right way in the end.
It's all appearances, really. I mean, like, it's not as if she's going to have any power. You know, she's been married off against her will, like, as an underage girl. But, you know, they use that to justify it, to say, like, oh, well, look, they're married now.
All right.
I mean, they could appoint someone, but it would take, you know, it would cost another war. You know, if they wanted to just appoint Tyrion Warden of the North, they would have to, you know, get all of the northern lords to swear fealty to him. So it's a lot easier for them to say, like, remember Eddard? You liked him. This is his daughter.
Okay.
It's easier.
I could see that. And while we're on this, just quickly, while we're on the thread of the other children after Joffrey, do we have any indication who their father is, or are we supposed to assume the same situation with them as is the case with Joffrey?
Yeah, they're all Jaime's.
Okay, so it's, you know, this blonde recessive gene, they just don't understand biology yet.
No, they don't. They don't. Yeah, so the kids they're all blonde. Cersei said that, I think, explicitly to Ned when he confronted her in season 1, yeah.
Okay.
That Robert was always too drunk, or he was always with whores, that it was easy for her to not ever get pregnant by him.
Right, and then Tywin is just assuming that by marrying her off, that all of a sudden that problem goes away. Like, people aren't going to think there are any rumors or anything. So I think that's interesting too, is like the appearances can show one thing, but then you just marry somebody off and it's like, ignore all those rumors. The hair color doesn't matter anymore. We figured it out. Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty nasty rumor, but I mean, so far, the bigger thing that's usurped that rumor is the Tyrells coming in.
Right.
Maybe the second most powerful family in Westeros right now, definitely the richest. So they've come in and, you know, literally fed the small folk, and having Marjorie win all of them over, and then Marjorie marry Joffrey seems like it's appeased all the peasants. I mean, when you are a peasant, you really don't care that much, unless, as long as you're eating, you know. And
right.
If somebody's saying, like, the war will be over and here's some food, I mean, they're like, sure, that's fine.
It makes very little difference to them, yeah.
It really doesn't make a difference to them. It's all the lords, you know, playing their Game of Thrones.
Okay, so I have a question for you two. Was this week's scene with Theon or Theon's dad and his sister a big enough payoff to justify just how much time we spent with Theon this season?
In a word?
There's a right answer here.
No. Not even close.
You got it right.
Whew. Yeah, all of a sudden his tough sister is going to fix things and take ships and rescue her brother, and it all just happens kind of as an epilogue. It's kind of a letdown. It could have been interesting if she would have done that, or that would have played out earlier, before all the torture scenes that were kind of irrelevant or unnecessary. And by the way, who is this one-dimensional torturer character that I feel like we got some insight into who he is, but I'm going to have to rely on Shannon to explain the 2 sentences where they described why he's relevant and why I should care about him.
Who he is? Yeah. So they want you to connect the dots. They didn't explicitly say, but in this episode they said when Walder Frey and Roose Bolton were like twisting their evil mustachios in the wedding hall while the blood was being like mopped off the floor. This extraneous scene.
Right.
Walder was sort of like, what happened at Winterfell? Like, and Roose is like, oh, I sent my bastard son.
Yeah, let's get some exposition in here.
So basically, that guy, his name is Ramsay Snow. So he's a bastard. He's Roose Bolton's bastard son, who he's been raising, in with his other children, who all mysteriously die. Like, all of his legitimate children die when they're really young.
Mysteriously, huh?
Mysteriously.
All right.
So Ramsay is like his only child. So he's been, raising him to inherit his lands and lordship and everything. But as of now, he's a bastard still. He hasn't been legitimized. And he's just like a crazy dude.
Okay, yeah. That helps a little bit, but I still don't really feel like he's that interesting of a character. Maybe Game of Thrones does really well when they have multi-dimensional characters that on one week you're feeling like you want to punch them in the face, and the next week you feel sad for them. And then there's like the one exception to that which is Joffrey, who you want to punch in the face every week. But that's fine. You need one of those characters, but then this guy just feels like, we already have a Joffrey dude, we don't need more.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that the show really succeeds, or the story really succeeds, because it does have all these gray area characters, and you find yourself rooting for a lot of people, even though you realize in the bigger picture, like, maybe multiple people who you're rooting for couldn't possibly all survive this thing.
Right.
And Ramsay Bolton is certainly an example of just a very evil character. I think this is a case where the TV adaptation just doesn't succeed as well. I think I mentioned before that this is really not spent as much time on in the books. So maybe they thought that it was, since it's so gross, like it could be a gross out factor for TV, like it could be dramatic to draw out, but...
Yeah, I thought it would have been just as effective had we only seen this week's scene, and we were just as surprised about what was in the box as his dad and his sister.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh God, Theon, he's alive and he's being tortured. Ah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's enough. I mean, that would really be enough.
I guess maybe it was one way they could put some naked bodies in, even though it doesn't seem like we need that many excuses to put naked bodies in. But we got some naked women with Theon.
Right. Thanks for reminding me of that. That was weird.
It was just horrible. It was like a snuff porn.
Right.
Yeah. Seriously. All right. Okay. So here's another question I have for you. Daenerys Targaryen. Everyone's a fan, right?
Right.
Are we concerned about how much she seemed to enjoy being worshipped and being called mother by her freed brown slaves as this white liberator?
Yeah, it definitely looked funny on TV.
You're saying in the book when you were reading it, you're like, yeah, that's okay, that makes sense. And you watch it, and you're like, whoa.
Oh, that looks weird. Yeah, well, in the book, she was on her horse, so she wasn't crowd surfing.
Well, it was a cool camera shot when she was there.
Yeah, it was. I think that I'm less concerned about what that looks like to us because, I mean, Westeros is different. I'm concerned about, at this point in the story, I'm concerned about her plans. Like, she doesn't really have any. So she's freeing all these people left and right with no real, game plan as to how she's going to feed them, take care of them, and now she has this big responsibility of people who are looking to her now as their mother and leader.
It's almost a little reminiscent of what one of the Starks would do. It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do.
Let's forget about the big picture, the long-term game plan. Let's just do what's right now.
Yeah.
Right. I actually really love how she puts herself out there and exposes herself, and it's been working well for her. But then at the same time, I love it. I also fear it because I feel like it's going to bite her in the ass any time now, because you can only walk into a crowd of random people so many times or liberate people by exposing yourself in front of them as part of your plan. And one of these times, somebody's going to take advantage of that, especially if her, persona gets out there. Okay, this is the one that's fighting for the throne that exposes herself for the first hour every time she meets you.
Yeah, she's already been almost assassinated one time.
Right, that's true.
So, yeah, I think that it's safe to say that she's in a dangerous position the more exposure that she gives herself, for sure. But I also think it's cool. I mean, she's got this conqueror spirit. Like, that's what Targaryens do. They just conquer. And she is naive, but she's just kind of doing it as she goes, just conquering shit left and right.
And she's doing it with some cleverness, some cunning.
Yeah.
And she's got some advisors now. Maybe too many cooks in that kitchen, actually.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially since she has a crush on one of them.
At least two have a crush on her, though, right?
At least two have a crush on her, yeah. It's not going to be good.
All right.